Reading that memo brought back memories I'd rather forget. Laura, my cheating ex-wife, is now my boss. How's that for irony? I should have seen it coming, but I was just glad to escape the marriage. Now, the past is haunting me all over again. Laura used to say I was a heart attack waiting to happen, and she wasn't wrong. My doctor had warned me, but I shrugged it off, thinking my hard work for the family was justified. Laura always wanted more: the mansion, the pool, the country club membership we never used. I believed it was my duty to give her everything. I thought she was the love of my life, and now she's back in control of it. That snapped me out of my apathy. I couldn't work under her after finding out about her affairs. I packed my things, grabbed my resignation letter, and left the office. I dropped everything: letter, phone, car keys, credit card, on Rachel's desk. It's been great working with you, Rachel. Don't let Laura mess with you. If she does, use me as leverage. Wait, Mark, you're really leaving? She asked, waving the letter. Yeah, Rachel. I can't work for someone I don't respect. She's lost mine completely. I'll miss you. She's going to flip out. She's been all over me about your workload, and I felt guilty not telling you. Don't worry about it. You've got a job to protect, and nothing you said could have changed anything. What do I tell her when she asks where you are? Tell her the truth. She won't be able to twist it. Just do what she says, as long as it doesn't compromise your values. I shook her hand, kissed it, and walked out. As I reached my car, a black limousine pulled up, and Laura stepped out with two men in suits. She looked every bit the businesswoman, but we all knew she was just a high-priced escort in disguise. She didn't see me, which made leaving even better. I waited for her to go inside, then left the parking lot for the last time. I'd sold what I needed, put the rest in storage, and finally took my doctor's advice to change my surroundings. I spent the next 3 months traveling, sightseeing, and recovering from the stress Laura had dumped on me. Eventually, I ended up in a small town with perfect weather, friendly neighbors, and great fishing. I rented a cottage by the lake with an option to buy. It was exactly what I needed for a fresh start. Sitting on the porch with a cold drink, I couldn't help but wonder how Laura reacted to my disappearance. The next day, I called Rachel. Hey, Rachel, it's Mark. How's everything going? Mark, it's so good to hear from you. I was starting to think you vanished. I laughed, watching the lake. Not quite, but this view is incredible. You'd love it. How are things there? Mark, you really shook things up. Laura's been laying people off left and right. Tom Walker quit last week after she shoved him into a windowless office. Tom? That's a loss. What's Laura doing? She's going to wreck everything. How's she treating you? Rachel chuckled. Oh, she's mad. She tried to fire me for letting you leave without talking to her. I told her to go ahead and try, but I'd take her and the company to court. She backed off pretty quick. Now I'm her executive VP assistant, and I demanded a big raise. She wasn't happy, but I got it. Rachel filled me in on the office gossip. Hearing about the chaos I left behind gave me a sense of satisfaction. I didn't leave out of spite, but it was nice to know Laura's plans were unraveling without me. Still, I worried about how it might affect the others. The next morning, I ran out of sugar and headed to the local store. Their lot bordered mine, separated by an open field. As I left, I nearly bumped into a young couple. After apologizing, I noticed a stressed young woman behind the counter. Can I help you? She asked, trying to juggle the baby's cries and the cars pulling up to the pumps. Where's Chloe when I need her? I smiled. Need a hand? I'm Mark. I live nearby. It looks like the baby needs your attention, and I just need some sugar, I said. How about I help out until you're free or Chloe shows up? I can handle the customers while you take care of your baby. She smiled, relieved. I'm Emily. I'd really appreciate the help, Mark. I managed the customers, chatting and washing windshields while they filled their tanks. After taking payments, I returned to the store, where another man had come in. What can I do for you? I asked. Just checking out your fishing rods, he replied. I'm on a business trip and my car's in the shop for the day, so I figured I'd pass the time fishing. He looked like the businessman I used to be, standing there eyeing cheap gear. Do you fish much? I asked. He shook his head. Not really, but I'd like to if I had time. I convinced him to invest in better equipment explaining how it would improve his chances of enjoying his day. After helping more customers, Emily finally returned, looking tired but grateful. Thanks, Mark. Why does it always get busy when you least expect it? Lily usually doesn't fuss, and Chloe's always here by now. I smiled, joking. I'd have to understand quantum mechanics to explain that. But when I suggested she might need more reliable help, her face fell. She looked at me with sad eyes. I'm a widow, Mark, she said quietly. Emily told me her husband David, an Army reservist, had died in a training accident, never knowing he was going to be a father. Lily was likely conceived the night before he left. David had so many plans, she said, gesturing to the store and land. Over the next few weeks, I helped out more and more. I know what you're thinking, and you're probably right. Emily was beautiful, and I hadn't felt that way in a long time. But it wasn't just that. Helping her made me feel useful again, something Laura had taken away from me with her cheating. Spending time with Emily was good for me. She was kind, fun, and grateful. Exactly what I needed. One evening, as I was driving home from the store, my phone rang. Hi, Mark, came a familiar voice. Good thing you're not a secretary. You'd never make it with your phone manners, Rachel teased. Hey, Rachel. It's almost 7 p.m. Something up? Her tone grew serious. I waited until I got home to call because I think my work phone is tapped. Mark, Laura's hired a private investigator to follow you. She made me set it up, and I couldn't refuse without putting my job at risk. I wanted to warn you, so you can keep a low profile. I sighed. Is she trying to intimidate me to death? Rachel chuckled nervously. I don't know, but she's stressed. She's working long hours, looks older, and has gained some weight. Well, she's definitely not pregnant. Not by me, anyway. Rachel laughed. No, it's stress eating. She's frantic trying to find you and blames me for letting you leave without talking to her. Good grief, I muttered. Ignoring her clearly isn't working. How about this? In a week, give her a fake report saying the investigator couldn't find me, but confirm my phone is still active. Tell her I'm willing to talk. Are you sure, Mark? This feels off. Don't worry, Rachel. Just look after yourself first. I appreciate the heads up, but don't put yourself at risk. A week later, Rachel texted me, PH 02 BB 2DB, ready for. Call today sometime. I chuckled. BB must stand for bad boss. Damn these young people and their codes. I wasn't sure what I'd say to Laura, but I figured I'd wing it when the time came. As promised, the call came in. I answered. Yes, Laura. What do you want? She hesitated, clearly thrown by my blunt greeting. What's that cow you call a secretary been up to? I hung up. The phone rang again. Damn it, Mark. I hung up once more. The third call was Rachel. Are you going to talk to her or not? Tell her to be polite next time, and she might get more than 2 words out of me. I'm sick of her attitude. Rachel laughed. My pleasure, Mark. Talk to you later. 5 minutes later, Laura called again. Mark. Yes, Laura. What do you want? A pause. Can I talk to you for a minute? I'm listening. Another long pause. Rachel cried on your shoulder. Huh? What did she tell you? Rachel's capable, and it doesn't matter what she said. The only reason you're talking to me is because of her. You should be grateful. Another pause. Then, surprisingly, I'm sorry, Mark. I'm just cranky lately. I knew Rachel was handling things well, but Laura's sudden attempt to calm me down made me suspicious. Rachel's doing fine, but cut to the chase, Laura. What do you want? I heard her struggling to keep it together. I need your advice, Mark. I thought we could work together, but you quit before I could explain everything. I couldn't help but laugh. I saw where things were going. When your company bought mine, I knew I wasn't sticking around for more humiliation. So, enjoy your life, Laura. Goodbye. No, wait, please. I need to talk in person. Just give me 30 minutes. I don't know who else to turn to. I gritted my teeth, wanting to hang up, but something held me back. After a long pause, I finally said, Fine, but I'm not coming to you. You'll come here. I'll set it up with Rachel, and she'll give you the details. I hung up before she could respond. Later, Rachel called, sounding annoyed. Laura's mad. She doesn't like going through me. She was like, why can't you just give me his address? But I told her it's your way or nothing. I smiled. Good work, Rachel. Let her deal with it. I was in the kitchen, prepping dinner, when Rachel called to let me know they'd arrive soon. I kept myself busy, wanting to unsettle Laura. She was coming into my space, on my terms, and I wanted her to feel it. 15 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. It's open, I called out. Rachel came in first, smiling. Well, don't you look right at home, she teased. I smiled, wiping my hands on a towel. Hey, Rachel. You look great. Laura stood behind her, looking nervous. She'd clearly gained some weight, and her eyes looked tired. Rachel's guess of 10 pounds wasn't far off. Laura had the look of someone under a lot of stress, and it was obvious this meeting wasn't easy for her. I could use a drink, Rachel said, giving me a quick hug. You're looking good. Country life suits you. There's wine, beer, or Coke in the fridge, I said, pointing with my hands still dirty from cooking. Help yourself. Laura spoke quietly. Hi, Mark. Wine would be nice. Her tone was different, softer, not the confident Laura I remembered. Rachel poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to Laura. Where's the view? Rachel asked, holding the bottle. Out the back, I replied. Go enjoy it. I'll be fine in here. Rachel grinned, pointing at me. Don't do anything crazy. I'm not here to clean up a crime scene. I chuckled. Don't worry. There's a fishing rod on the deck if you want to try your luck. Rachel rolled her eyes. I wouldn't know what to do with a fish if I caught one. She slipped outside, leaving Laura and me alone. Take a seat, I said, nodding to the chair at the table, still focused on chopping herbs. Tell me why you're here. Laura hesitated, then sat down. She tried to ease the tension with small talk. Nice place you've got here, Mark. It's small, but really nice. I tensed, annoyed by her attempt at chit-chat. This isn't small talk, Laura, I said flatly, not looking up. Say what you need to say so we can both move on. She sighed and took a sip of her wine. Can I ask one question first? She asked cautiously. I shrugged. Go ahead. Doesn't mean I'll answer. Why did you leave? She asked, her voice low, eyes searching for any sign of anger. I put the knife down and turned to face her. You're a vice president now, Laura. Figure it out. You don't need me to explain everything. She looked hurt but held her ground. That's a low blow, even for you, Mark. I'm good at my job, but I'm not a mind reader. I crossed my arms. You don't need to be. A good manager reads people, understands what drives them. You're supposed to know how to use your employees' strengths, make it work for the company. It's a win-win, or at least it should be. Laura shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but she stayed composed. All right, Mark, what do you think of me? My talents? I almost laughed at her attempt to lighten the mood. You're a bulldozer, Laura. You plow through people without caring what you leave behind. She blinked, clearly not expecting that. A bulldozer? She repeated, stunned. Really? I nodded, turning back to the stove. You get things done, but you don't inspire loyalty. You intimidate. People follow because they're scared, not because they respect you. Laura was silent for a moment, processing what I'd said. I never thought you saw me that way. Well, now you know, I replied, stirring the sauce. You asked, I answered. Care to elaborate on that? Laura asked, her voice tinged with irritation. I smiled to myself as I kept chopping. Sure, Laura. You're a bulldozer. You charge toward your goals without stopping to think about who you could help, or who might help you. You ignore anyone in your way. That's why you're in your current situation. You've burned bridges and missed opportunities. I saw a tear form in her eye, and for the first time, she seemed at a loss. No, I didn't want that, she whispered. Everything I did was for us, but your ego got in the way. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. If you'd stayed, I could have explained my plan. You still haven't told me why you left. I tasted the sauce and added more salt. I saw the writing on the wall, Laura. I know you're here to cut the deadwood, clear out those who needed to go for the company to move forward. I just made it easier for you. I saw her eyes light up, as if this was the conversation she'd wanted all along. Mark, for a smart guy, you can be so stupid. I never intended to fire you. If you'd stuck around, you'd know that. Everything I did was to help us. Your dreams, our future. I almost laughed. That's a neat trick, tugging at my heart while stroking my ego. But I remember you're good at stroking. Her face reddened slightly. I believed in you, Mark. We used to sit and talk in the kitchen about how the idiots at the top were ruining everything. I wanted to help you get your company back on track. I told my bosses you could make it profitable again. But instead, you left me to deal with it alone. I could feel her desperation creeping into her voice as she went on. I keep working long hours trying to turn your ideas into reality. All I need is your help. I've never loved anyone like I love you, Mark. This could still be our future. Maybe not together as a couple, but as partners. We can have a great business relationship. What do you say? Let's call a truce, work together, and show them what we can do. She leaned back, her speech over. It was up to me now. While she was talking, I had finished the sauce and put water on for spaghetti. The only thing that came to mind was Julius Caesar's last words, "Et tu, brute?" Betrayal had been my first thought when I learned about her affairs. But despite everything, I couldn't deny she was still attractive. I took a deep breath, knowing I had to stay sharp. All right, Laura, let's assume I buy into this brilliant plan. Why do you think I'm the one who can help you? Her eyes flashed with frustration. I've already told you. The employees trust and respect you. Your obstacles were with upper management, and I've cleared them. Now you can get the support you need. I gave her a sad smile. You don't realize that your very presence as VP undermines my ability to get their support. You refuse to believe you've done anything wrong, but others see it differently. Laura looked concerned. What do you mean? I sighed, knowing I was treading on delicate ground. Have you ever wondered why you struggle to get support for your ideas? The rumors about your methods, your ethics, are everywhere, and not one word of it came from me. Her face froze, and I could tell she didn't want to discuss this. People think you slept your way to the top, Laura. They know about our failed marriage and respect me for how I handled it. If I accept your offer, it would send the message that everything you did was fine. I'd go from the wronged husband to the disgraced employee, losing their respect and my effectiveness. Tears welled up in Laura's eyes as the weight of my words hit her. I don't believe you, Mark. I've shown I'm willing to work hard. I took on a powerful role to get the job done. I'm capable, or Brian wouldn't have given me the job. I shook my head, feeling more sadness than anger now. Laura, you really believe your own story, don't you? Did Brian come to you with the takeover, or did you push for it? She wiped her eyes with a tissue, trying to regain control. It doesn't matter what anyone thinks. I'm not Brian's puppet. I approached him, and he put up plenty of barriers before I could present my proposal to the board. I nodded, just as I thought. Did Brian entertain you when he finally let you speak to the board? Her long sigh told me everything. She tried to regain composure. Why do you think that? I smiled, amused at her confusion. Do you know why I was good at my job, Laura? I made profiles of everyone I met, including you. My mistake was trusting you unconditionally because I loved you. That cost me. So, I adjusted your profile accordingly. My grandfather always said, there's no point in getting older if you're not getting smarter. Laura sat back, her confidence shattered. The truth had finally sunk in. I assess people by their words and actions to see if they fit their profile. Knowing Brian, I doubt he cares if you succeed, Laura. If you fail, he'll blame the board for backing you. If you succeed, he'll take the credit for bringing in a promising executive. I saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes, so I pressed on. Brian doesn't care if you're smart enough to pull this off or foolish enough to think you can. As long as you keep him entertained, he's satisfied. You're on your own, a small fish in a big pond full of hungry piranhas. Laura clutched her napkin, clearly shaken by the reality of her situation, but still, she tried to fight it. So you don't think I can do it? She asked weakly. I shrugged. No, Laura. I know you can't. It would take a Saturn V rocket to launch you from your VP position into corporate oblivion. And when that happens, where will your precious security be? I turned away to calm myself, but I wasn't done. From what I hear, you've been spinning your wheels, creating so much smoke that others can barely do their jobs. I wouldn't be surprised if the next shareholders meeting reports a 25% drop in profits, but that's just speculation. I paused and looked at her. No matter how you spin it, this isn't about us. You said you loved me and did it for both of us, but really, it's always been about you. Laura shuddered and nodded weakly. I love you, Mark. I didn't want to divorce you. I scoffed. You didn't want a divorce, but you were willing to let me work myself to death. You called me a heart attack waiting to happen. Does that sound like love to you? She couldn't meet my eyes, and for a moment, her defiance crumbled. I didn't mean what I said back then. I love you even now. I regret so much of it, Mark. I sighed, tired of her attempts at redemption. Maybe you believe that, Laura, but that doesn't change anything. I can't trust you, personally or in business. This conversation is over. You've made it to the top. Now you'll just have to wait for Brian to retire or disappear before you can even think about CEO. You're trying to solidify your position by taking over my old firm, hoping to get me to work hard again, and for what? To benefit you. Laura tried to interrupt, but I silenced her with a glance. Your plan is clear. I'm amazed you thought I'd fall in line. I kicked you out, Laura. Did you really think I'd follow your orders? I've made it clear. I'm not weak. Maybe it's my fault for letting you think otherwise. Laura was struggling to hold herself together. One moment you blame me, the next you're taking responsibility. You're the one who's confused, Mark, not me. I lowered my head, shaking it in disbelief. Good, Laura. You've heard the saying, cruel to be kind. But I wasn't trying to be kind. I went to Brian and pushed him to fulfill his promise, so you'd get your VP position. I didn't want to see you suffer, even though you deserved it. That was my mistake, making you think there was a chance I'd take you back. Your little love notes on my birthday, Christmas, and every other occasion didn't help. I turned back to the stove, checking the sauce. If I'd handled things right, you would have disappeared and started over. That's what I want you to do now. Walk away and start fresh. Tears streamed down her face as she grasped the full meaning of my words. You might have to go back to a secretarial job, but it's better than staying here and fighting. If you're lucky, you'll be licking stamps while some office idiot entertains you. Her defiance returned, but instead of making me angry, it made me sad. I know I hurt you, Mark. I beat myself up about it every day, but what you're saying is just cruel. You don't believe in me, yet I still believe in you. I'll show you. Watch, and I'll prove I can do this. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Come in, I said, irritated. Emily poked her head in. Everything okay, Mark? I didn't mean to interrupt. I sighed, checking my watch. I'd lost track of time and let my emotions get the best of me. I'm sorry, Emily. Please, don't come in. Laura was just leaving. Laura glanced at Emily, standing in the doorway. She was younger, 5, maybe 10 years, and strikingly pretty, with long, flowing dark blonde hair. Laura's face showed her realization as she took in the scene. She looked at me, then the dinner simmering on the stove, and began to cry as the truth hit her. I glanced at the food, knowing exactly what she was thinking. What? You thought this was for you? I said with a smirk. I told you this wasn't a social call. Don't be upset that I invited a friend to dinner. We broke up years ago. The only reason I let you come here was to knock some sense into you. Laura wiped her tears but didn't respond. I could see that the weight of the conversation had finally settled in. This was over, and we both knew it. Laura stood up, head down, and hurried past Emily, muttering, "Tell Rachel I'll be waiting in the car." Emily watched her leave and then looked at me, concerned. I hope I didn't make things worse. I can go if you need to deal with this. Should I tell Chloe I don't need her to babysit? I shook my head. It's not your fault. I'm actually glad you showed up when you did. I hugged Emily and kissed her cheek. Could you watch the pasta for a minute? I need to let Rachel know our meeting's over so she can take Laura home. I stepped outside onto the back terrace and saw Rachel napping in the afternoon sun. Laura's words echoed in my head. How she'd removed the obstacles that blocked my ideas. It made me think. How do you like the view? I asked. Rachel smiled without opening her eyes. It's amazing, just like you said. How'd it go in there? She asked, sitting up. Didn't hear any shouting. Not great. She's not backing down. She's waiting for you in the car. I hesitated, then added, Can I ask you something, Rachel? Of course, Mark. Anything. How do you see your future at work? How ambitious are you? Her eyes widened, surprised by the question. I'm not sure where this is going, but if you're asking, I'd like to have Laura's job one day. I know I'd be good at it, but I won't compromise my values. Why do you ask? I think it's time to end this circus, I said, feeling more resolved. Can you get in touch with Tom Walker and meet me in town in 3 weeks? I might have an offer for you both. Rachel nodded, curious but didn't press me for details. I led her back inside, where she saw Emily at the stove. Rachel nudged me with a grin. Now I see why Laura stormed out, you old dog. Her playful look made me smirk. Emily's beautiful, and she's probably the final nail in Laura's coffin. Laura's never been in her league. I'm not even in her league. Rachel chuckled. She's licking her wounds right now, Mark. I don't blame her. I looked at Emily, appreciating her kindness and beauty, and she's just as lovely on the inside. Emily looked up as I introduced Rachel. Nice to meet you. I wasn't sure Mark had room for me in his life, with all the women I hear about, she said, half-jokingly. Rachel laughed. Don't worry about that. Mark's a one-woman man, and from what I've seen, he's got his eye on you. But watch out, he can be quite the charmer. I felt my face flush. All right, Rachel, I think you've said enough for one night. Time to head out. As I gently nudged her toward the front door, Rachel winked at Emily. If you're smart, you won't let this one get away. She kissed me on the cheek and said goodbye. I'll see you in 3 weeks, Mark. Later, Emily and I sat on the back deck, sipping Merlot and watching the waterfowl. We talked about the day, and eventually, I shared the story of my failed marriage with Laura and all that had come after. You don't really want to do this, do you, Mark? Emily asked, seeing through my tough exterior. No, I don't, I admitted. But it has to be done. I can't let everyone lose their jobs because I took the easy way out. I don't have a choice. Emily was quiet for a moment, then said, You know, Laura still has feelings for you. I almost laughed. She might have before, but not now. Not after what I said today. Emily smiled softly. For all your toughness, it's clear you care about people, Mark, Laura included. Women appreciate that about men. I didn't have a response, so I took a sip of my beer. Emily patted my arm gently. I believe you'll do the right thing for everyone, but I'm afraid not everyone will agree. I nodded. Maybe. But Laura made her bed, and now she has to lie in it. Emily broke the silence a few minutes later. Speaking of beds, when are you going to show me yours? Her words caught me off guard. Huh. I stammered. Emily chuckled. Rachel told me that if I wanted you, I shouldn't hesitate. She said if I'm smart, I wouldn't let you slip through my fingers. So here I am, holding on to someone I think is worth it. So, you're interested in more than just friendship? I sounded like a nervous teenager, unsure how to respond. Emily giggled. You're blushing, Mark. My face burned as a sheepish grin spread across my lips. You sure know how to make a guy feel awkward. I rubbed my face, trying to regain my composure. That day, I walked into your store and saw you looking like you needed help. I felt like a knight in shining armor rescuing a damsel in distress. Her smile was warm, and she leaned in close. You were my knight that day, Mark, and you still are. Since then, I've leaned on you more than I realized. You've supported me for months, and I know now why. I raised an eyebrow, confused by what she was getting at. It must have been hard for you when Laura made you feel like you weren't needed anymore. But if it helps, Mark, I need you. I haven't felt this comfortable or relaxed since David died. I nodded, realizing how much her words hit home. Yeah, it's a man thing. Laura never understood that. I couldn't explain it either. Emily squeezed my arm gently. You've been good to me, Mark, and I appreciate it. But it wasn't until Rachel's teasing tonight that I realized I have more than friendly feelings for you. So, do you want to take it to the next level? Emily asked, her expression sincere, filled with hope. I grinned slyly. Well, if you insist, madam, I'll have to show you my etchings. Emily's eyes lit up with amusement. Forget the etchings. I'm more interested in the tool you used to make them. We both laughed, and she stood, heading for the door with a playful look. Race you to the bedroom. Later, as I walked into the restaurant, I saw Tom and Rachel already seated. Tom stood up and extended his hand. Long time no see, old friend. You look 10 years younger. I smiled, shaking his hand. Good to see you too. I'm doing great. How about you? Eh, average. But no one listens when you complain, Tom joked. I kissed Rachel on the cheek. You're looking radiant as always. I don't know what you saw in this brood, but I hope he's treated you well. Rachel chuckled. He's rough, but I like the rugged type. Tom smirked. And how would you know that? I laughed. I'm a people watcher. I saw the way you two clicked when I asked Tom to join us today. I think you'd make quite the team. Tom grinned. Speaking of which, what's this big offer you mentioned? Straight to business, huh? You haven't changed, Tom. Let's talk, and then we can relax and enjoy the meal. After the waitress brought our drinks, I pulled some folders from my briefcase. The company's in serious trouble. If we don't act soon, everyone will be out of a job. Options are limited, as you both know. I handed Tom a white folder. Feel free to disagree or add anything. This is a rough draft. Tom flipped through it, studying the contents while I pulled out another folder. Here's a list of key people we need on our side. You'll have to figure out how to get them. Tom looked up, surprised. You've really thought this through, Mark. You're not just targeting JPL and Laura. You're going after Dobson Incorporated and Brian too. I nodded, seeing his hesitation. We have no choice. Since Dobson bought JPL, we need to approach this from both sides. My original focus was on JPL, but now Dobson's board is in play. If you can sway the board, and Rachel handles JPL, we have a chance, though it's slim. Tom handed the folder to Rachel, who began leafing through it. You're right, Mark. The situation is worse than I thought. But there's potential here. I'd suggest bringing in Paul Fletcher. He's a master at creative accounting. I frowned but nodded. Paul's a genius, no doubt. But we've never gotten along. He's never liked me. Rachel looked up, agreeing with Tom. We need him, Mark. I'll talk to him. He might not like you, but he'll respect the opportunity. Tom picked up the second folder, looking at the list of names. Some of these people are out of my reach. I don't know if I can get them on board. I smirked. What do you think I've been doing for the last 3 weeks? There's only one name I couldn't get close to, Miller. If he's not with us, none of this will work. Tom raised an eyebrow. How'd you become so influential? Influential, my foot, I replied, chuckling. If I were that good, Miller would already be on our side. But here's the list of meetings you've got scheduled with everyone else. I handed him another folder. Rachel glanced up from her reading. Isn't Miller Daniel Matthews' uncle? Maybe Daniel could help us arrange a meeting. Tom and I exchanged hopeful glances. Can you figure that out, Rachel? Tom asked. Rachel smiled confidently. I have a meeting with Daniel tomorrow. I'll ask him then. That made me feel a bit better. I've organized the times and dates for you both. Things are getting messy, even at higher levels of government. We need to finalize the details and get everyone together soon. Rachel shook her head, still looking through the folder. I can't believe Brian didn't see this coming. Oh, he knows, I scoffed. He just doesn't care. He's got Laura lined up as the perfect scapegoat, and she's in for a nasty surprise when he betrays her. Rachel wrinkled her nose. Laura may be selfish, but she doesn't deserve that. I nodded grimly. Brian will need to act before the next quarterly meeting to save his skin. We need to act quickly and strategically if we want to pull this off. Tom leaned back, looking skeptical. So, you think we're going to accept this offer? I grinned. Come on, Tom. Think about it. What do you have to lose? If Laura can pitch her ideas, so can you. Have you found a job that matches your skills yet? And I know Laura isn't exactly your favorite person, and Brian's not on your Christmas list either. Rachel believes in you, just like I do. It's time to take a shot. Tom laughed, glancing at Rachel. All tied up with a neat little pink ribbon, huh? Rachel frowned thoughtfully. What about Brian? He won't go down without a fight, and he's got enough support to sabotage us before we even get started. I grinned. Leave Brian to me. You won't have to worry about him. Just keep Laura busy so she doesn't do something stupid, like drag the whole company down with her, I said, glancing at Rachel. Rachel smirked. After your talk the other day, she's the least of our worries. Emily's presence rattled her, and now she's determined to prove you wrong. You really messed with her head, Mark. I've had to tweak a lot of her proposals just to make her look halfway competent. Tom, Rachel, and I enjoyed our meal, hashing out the details of our plan. As we said our goodbyes, we set a meeting for 2 days later to finalize everything with the rest of the team. The next meeting was intense. Rachel and Tom had gathered a half-dozen allies, and as expected, Paul Fletcher was there, hostile but listening. "Let me see the financial packet," Paul demanded. We watched as he quickly flipped through the numbers. "This is nonsense, Anderson. You can't substantiate these projections." I wanted to snap back, but managed to keep calm. "They're just estimates, Paul, approximations." Fletcher smiled sarcastically. "Don't quit your day job, Anderson. These numbers are as reliable as a weather forecast." I knew I had to handle him carefully. "Look, Paul, can I call you Paul? We haven't crossed paths much since Laura took over, but you're here because you're the best at what you do." His chest heaved slightly, sensing where I was going. He grinned but didn't let me off easy. "Don't patronize me, Anderson. I'm no laborer who doesn't see through that." I gritted my teeth. I know it sounded patronizing, but it doesn't make it any less true. I addressed the room, feeling the tension rise. "What are you all going to do when the next shareholders meeting rolls around? I don't care if you agree with this proposal or not. I can walk away and let you figure out how to line up for unemployment." I looked directly at Paul. "You're a genius with numbers, Paul. You'll find work quickly. But what about them?" I motioned to the others. "We need your creative accounting to make this plan work." Paul's expression shifted, and I saw the wheels turning. "So this isn't some scam to boost your wife's career?" I shook my head. "No, Paul. She's my ex-wife. She'll be lucky to be filing papers in a basement if we pull this off. Whether this takeover works or not, she and Brian are done. That's a promise." Paul looked around the room and then back at the folder. "You know, Mark, I've been doing so much with so little for so long. Now I get to do everything with nothing." He flashed a wide grin. "What's the deadline for this miracle?" I glanced at Tom, who replied cautiously, "By 3 p.m. tomorrow." Paul's eyes widened. Holy hell, even God would struggle with that timeline. We exchanged worried glances until Paul added, "But if I pull it off, I want a sign on my desk that says God." Tom chuckled. "I'll personally engrave it, and we'll all bow to you if you deliver by 3 p.m. We all breathed a sigh of relief. "All right, folks, we're burning the midnight oil," I said. "Rachel, bring in anyone you need." Rachel took charge immediately, organizing teams and brainstorming ideas. Paul argued with her until she snapped. "I don't care how many people it takes. Just get it done, Paul. We know what's at stake." Tom laughed. "You were right, Mark. She's a hard worker." I smiled, proud of how Rachel was handling it. I never doubted her. As Rachel gathered the team, I headed for Brian's office. His secretary tried to stop me, but he waved her off. "It's okay, Sarah," he said, clearly annoyed. "What's this Anderson invasion about?" I gave him a menacing smile. "That's no way to start a negotiation, Brian. You'd think a man with your business acumen would know how to be a bit more contrite." Brian leaned back, waiting for me to speak. I knew that in a battle of wills, the first to break the silence would lose. Brian's patience faltered, and he finally snapped. "Are you just going to stand there, or are you going to tell me why you're here?" "I've got a shareholders meeting in an hour." "I'm here to help you pack," I said, grinning. Brian scowled. "And where exactly am I supposed to go?" "I don't care, as long as you're gone by the end of the day. Maybe another state, or the other side of the country." "What if I refuse?" Brian said, leaning forward, trying to regain control. "I'm close to retirement, and I'm not giving up my golden parachute for someone like you." I shook my head, feeling the tension build. "You have two choices. Resign now and walk away with what you have, or stay and watch me dismantle your life, including your family. You'll be lucky to afford a cup of coffee," I said, leaning in. Brian frowned. "I did what you asked. I made Laura vice president, and now she controls JPL. Why the threats? We've never met, but I thought you kept your word. What changed? Are you coming after me because of the past?" I leaned closer, placing both hands on his desk. "You changed my mind. I was keeping my end of the deal until you broke it. Now it's time to pay. You screwed Laura over, let her present a doomed proposal to the board, and used her to get to me. You saw a chance to kill two birds with one stone, knowing she'd turn to me for help, and you banked on me refusing. You broke our agreement, Brian, and now you're going to pay. Sweat trickled down his face as the truth hit him. I didn't break the deal, Anderson. She came to me. I gave her a chance to prove herself. If she's in this mess, it's her fault. Don't give me that, I snarled, sweeping the items off his desk. You could have stopped her. Even a fifth grader could see she had no chance without your help. You chose to let her fail. Now fix it, resign, or watch your life fall apart. Brian's face contorted as he struggled to process the situation. I doubt you have enough on me to follow through, he muttered. I smiled. Do you think I've been idle? I have enough dirt on you. Your affairs, corporate fraud, embezzlement. Your choice, jail or retirement. The realization hit him like a punch. He knew I was serious. Tom Walker is talking to the board right now with a plan that will ruin you. When I leave here, they'll have everything I've collected. Brian broke. He pressed the intercom. Sarah, come in with a pad and pencil. I need to dictate a letter. I walked over to his wine cabinet, poured myself a scotch, and took a slow sip. No need to rush, Brian. I've already won. His secretary entered and took her seat, sensing the tension. As Brian dictated his resignation letter, Emma struggled to suppress a smile. Once he finished, she quickly left the room, unable to contain her laughter. Seeing her reaction, I knew Brian would be out the door before he had a chance to pack. As he exited his office for the last time, I called out, I hear the weather's nice at the South Pole this time of year. I won't be looking for you there. Good day, Brian. Emma returned a few minutes later and hugged me. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you so much. I pulled back, confused. Why are you thanking me? Tears welled up in her eyes. Brian was blackmailing me, making unwanted advances. Just hints, but I knew he was going to push harder if I didn't comply. I can't thank you enough for getting rid of him. I felt a surge of anger toward Brian for targeting her. It was the right thing to do, I said. He deserved what he got. Emma smiled through her tears. You're on my Christmas list now. I'll even try to talk my husband into naming our next child after you. She handed me the envelope. Typing this resignation letter was the most fun I've had in a long time. 6 months later, I walked into the office that Brian had left behind. Good morning, Sarah. Is the boss in? She smiled brightly. Good morning, Mr. Anderson. Yes, Mr. Walker is expecting you. As I reached for the door, she added, by the way, you were right. He's everything a secretary could want in a boss. Thanks again. I grinned. My pleasure, Sarah. And call me Mark. Mr. Anderson was my father. I entered Tom's office, sinking into a chair. So, how does it feel to be CEO of one of the most profitable companies in the stock market? Tom chuckled. Mark, you old idiot. Where have you been? I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you've done for everyone, especially Rachel and me. She still pinches herself every morning to make sure it's not a dream. I raised an eyebrow, teasing. Oh? And how do you know that? Are you waking up next to her? Is a mini-merger planned? Tom shrugged with a smile. We're in negotiations, but I'd say a deal is likely. Rachel wants you at the signing. Oh, and I hear you've got a fine filly of your own you're tending to? I laughed. Exactly. You had a business to save, and I had one to build. Emily's a fine thoroughbred. If I get the chance, I'll hitch my wagon to her. Tom's tone shifted. Have you heard about Laura? I nodded, my expression turning serious. Yeah, Rachel called when she was taken to the hospital. The stress was too much for her. She snapped. Rachel asked if I'd visit, but I thought it would only make things worse. She needs professional help. Tom sighed. Yeah, you're probably right. Rachel feels sorry for her and mentioned offering her an entry-level position at JPL, maybe as a secretary. I shook my head. That doesn't bother me. I don't hate her anymore. I don't even like her. She's just someone I once knew. I hope she gets better. Tom leaned back. No chance you're coming back? I could offer you a great financial package. I grinned. Not a chance. You've got everything under control. Besides, you've got God working for you now. Tom burst out laughing. Oh yeah, Paul. He got his plaque and earned everyone's respect. You were right, Mark. He's a genius with numbers. For a while, he was a hotshot around here. Tom chuckled. What's funny? I asked. I was just thinking about how Paul looked when the girls from accounting used to sneak up on him. We'll see how godly he is when he tries to figure out women with math formulas. I laughed. I would have loved to see that. But while you were managing boardrooms, poor Brian was sweating bullets. Tom grinned. If you ever need a job, Mark, let me know. I shook my head. No, thanks. I've got what I want. Emily and I are running a family resort now. I'm here to offer you corporate rates for Thanksgiving, maybe a fishing contest or two. Tom nodded. Sounds perfect. We'll make it a team-building event. Emily and I were later invited to Tom and Rachel's wedding. They have 2 wonderful boys now, and they're still a powerhouse in business. At Christmas, we get cards from Sarah, who even convinced her husband to name their next child Markantha, after me. Brian, on the other hand, hasn't been heard from since his wife dumped his clothes on the lawn and drenched them with sprinklers. His Elvis autographed guitar is now a garden gnome's necklace. Rumor has it he's chasing penguins in Antarctica. As for Laura, after getting the help she needed, she took Rachel's offer for a secretary position. She sold her mansion and moved into a modest apartment near work. She'll never be part of the elite again, but she has her home and will work until retirement. We talked at a company Thanksgiving party, and she apologized for her arrogance. I apologized for putting her through the ringer, but it was necessary to save everyone's jobs. She's moved on, and so have I. 6 months later, Emily and I got married. I watched as she took out a picture of her late husband, David, kissed it, and placed it in a drawer. Touched, I walked over, took out a picture of my late wife, Grace, and placed it on her dressing table. David deserves to see his wife happy and loved, don't you think? I said. Emily smiled tearfully. You're a good man, Mark. David and you would have been great friends. I felt a wave of contentment wash over me. When Lily is old enough, you'll tell her all about her father. She deserves that. Our resort is thriving. Chloe now lives in an apartment attached to the store. We've expanded with more cabins for weekend fishermen, and I spend my days working on boats and repairs. Lily is 5 now, and I've become the father figure she never had. Last summer, we surprised her with a baby brother, Charlie, who shifted some of the attention away from her. I fuss over both of them, and even my doctor is pleased. Maybe I should send Laura a thank you card. Just kidding.